The rain hadn't fallen naturally in Neotokara for 73 years. What passed for weather now was a perpetual mist of chemical condensation that clung to the chrome towers like a shroud, refracting the city's neon glow into prismatic halos. From the 47th floor of the Quantum District, the skyline looked less like a city and more like a circuit board, drowning in luminous fog. Claire Rynne didn't notice the view anymore. She'd lived in this apartment for 4 years, and the spectacle had long since faded into background noise, just another data point in a life built on observation and measurement. Tonight, like most nights, she sat hunched over her workstation. 3 holographic screens projecting streams of incomprehensible symbols into the air before her. The quantum linguistics interface translated dimensional frequencies into visual patterns, transforming the chaos of the Ethermore passage into something almost readable. The passage hung in low orbit like a wound in the sky, a shimmering tear in reality that had opened 6 months ago during one of the IRB's dimensional experiments. What they'd expected to be a controlled probe into parallel physics had instead punched a hole through to somewhere else entirely. Somewhere that shouldn't exist according to every law of quantum mechanics Claire had spent a decade studying. She rubbed her eyes, the familiar burn of exhaustion settling behind her temples. The timestamp in the corner of her vision read, 2:47 a.m. She should sleep. She should eat. She should do any number of things that constituted basic human maintenance. Instead, she adjusted the frequency filter and ran the signal analysis again. The waveform appeared on her center screen, a serpentine ribbon of energy that pulsed with irregular rhythm. For weeks, she'd been tracking patterns in the passage's emissions, searching for structure in what most of her colleagues dismissed as dimensional noise. But Claire had always been good at finding meaning in chaos. It was why the IRB had recruited her straight out of the academy, why Dr. Vale had taken her under his wing, why she'd become the youngest senior analyst in the department. She leaned closer, her reflection ghosting across the hologram. The pattern was changing. Claire's fingers flew across the haptic interface, isolating the new frequency band. The waveform shifted, contracted, then suddenly resolved into something that made her breath catch in her throat. It wasn't random. It was harmonic. More than that, it was organic. The pattern resembled a heartbeat, a rhythmic pulse that no artificial signal should possess. She ran a comparative analysis against the database of known biological signatures. The computer churned through petabytes of data, then returned a result that made no sense. Match. 73% similarity to human vocal patterns. Structure, unknown language. Phonetic complexity exceeds terrestrial baseline. Anomaly, signal appears to be targeting this specific receiver. Claire stared at the last line, targeting. That implied intention, intelligence. She opened the audio reconstruction protocol, her hands trembling slightly as she routed the harmonic pattern through the linguistic synthesizer. The program would attempt to convert the energy signature into sound waves, though she had no expectation it would produce anything comprehensible. The speakers crackled. Then, through layers of static and distortion, she heard it. A voice. Not words, not quite, but something that carried the weight and cadence of speech. Syllables that rose and fell like music, ancient and beautiful and utterly alien. Claire increased the clarity filter, stripping away interference until the sound became almost pure, and then it said her name. Not in English, not in any language she recognized. But the phonemes aligned too perfectly to be coincidence. The stress patterns, the vowel shapes, it was her name, wrapped in a linguistic structure that predated any human tongue. Claire Rynne. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was impossible. Signals didn't know names. Energy patterns didn't possess knowledge or intent. Yet there it was, repeating in the static, calling to her across the gulf between dimensions. She initiated a full recording protocol, hands moving on autopilot, while her mind raced through implications. This was beyond anomalous. This was first contact, or something that would redefine the very concept. The waveform on her screen intensified. the harmonic patterns growing more complex. The voice in the static became clearer, more urgent, speaking words she couldn't understand but felt resonating somewhere deeper than language. Then, without warning, every screen went white. Claire jerked back as her workstation overloaded, the holographic displays fragmenting into cascading errors. Alarms screamed from her neural implant, proximity warnings, energy spike alerts, dimensional breach protocols, all firing simultaneously. The lights in her apartment flickered. The chemical rain outside seemed to pause, suspended in mid-descent. And in the center of her living room, a point of light appeared. It started as a pinprick, hovering 3 feet off the ground. Then it expanded, tearing reality like fabric, edges burning with colors that shouldn't exist in Earth's electromagnetic spectrum. The air filled with the smell of ozone and something else, something like summer meadows and ancient forests. Fragrances that had no place in Neo-Tokara's sterile atmosphere. Claire stumbled backward, her rational mind screaming that this couldn't be happening, that dimensional breaches didn't occur inside residential buildings, that she needed to call emergency services and evacuate and do literally anything except stand there watching as the tear in space grew wider, the light intensified, becoming almost unbearable. She raised her arm to shield her eyes, and through the gaps between her fingers, she saw a silhouette forming in the brilliance. A figure, tall and slender, with proportions subtly wrong for human anatomy, limbs too elegant, posture too fluid. As the light dimmed, features emerged from the glow, hair like liquid silver, cascading past narrow shoulders in waves that seemed to move independent of gravity. Skin that luminous in the darkness, not pale but radiant, as if lit from within by gentle starlight. Eyes that held entire constellations, pupils dilating and contracting like distant nebulae. She was beautiful. Not in the manufactured way of neural enhancement or genetic optimization, but with a beauty that predated such concepts. The kind of beauty that ancient poets had tried to capture in words and always failed. She was also collapsing. The figure stumbled forward, legs buckling, and Claire's paralysis broke. She lunged forward on instinct, catching the woman before she hit the floor. The physical contact sent a shock through Claire's nervous system. The woman's skin was fever hot, and beneath it she could feel energy pulsing in patterns that matched the waveforms from the passage. Up close, Claire could see the signs of distress. The woman's breathing was shallow and rapid. Sweat beaded on her forehead, or something like sweat, faintly luminescent. Her eyes rolled back, showing only the cosmic patterns within, and her lips moved, whispering in that same melodic language from the signal. Claire lowered her gently to the floor, her medical training kicking in despite the impossibility of the situation. She checked for a pulse and found something, not a heartbeat exactly, but a rhythmic thrum of energy beneath the skin, faltering and irregular. "Hey," Claire said, keeping her voice steady. "Can you hear me? Do you understand?" The woman's eyes snapped open, focusing on Claire with sudden intensity. Her lips moved again, and this time the words were clear enough to trigger Claire's translation implant, but the device failed. Error messages cascaded across Claire's vision. Language not in database, phonetic structure incompatible, semantic parsing failed, all except one phrase, one string of syllables that the implant managed to process, translating with a confidence rating of 87%. "The bridge is breaking." Then the woman's eyes closed, her body going limp in Claire's arms, and the last echoes of the dimensional rift sealed shut behind her, leaving only the faint scent of vanished meadows and the impossible reality of an alien being unconscious on Claire Rynne's apartment floor. Claire sat there, cradling this stranger from another world, and realized with crystalline clarity that everything she understood about the universe had just fundamentally changed. The rain outside resumed its chemical descent. The city hummed on, oblivious, and in the quantum frequencies that filled the space between atoms, something vast and patient began to watch. 3 hours later, as false dawn painted the smog a sickly orange, Claire sat at her kitchen counter with her third cup of synthetic coffee, staring at the unconscious elf woman she'd moved to her couch. Elf. The word felt ridiculous even thinking it, a fantasy concept with no place in the year 2489. Yet what other term fit? The pointed ears, subtle but unmistakable, the ethereal features, the way her hair seemed to absorb and reflect light in ways that violated basic optical principles. If this was some kind of bioengineered human variant, it was unlike anything Claire had seen in the genetic databases. She'd run every scan her home medical kit aloud. The results were nonsensical. Body temperature fluctuating between 34 and 42 degrees Celsius. Cellular structure that appeared to shift at the quantum level. A cardiovascular system that didn't pump blood, but rather circulated some form of luminescent fluid that defied spectroscopic analysis. Most disturbing was the dimensional resonance. Her equipment registered the woman as being simultaneously present and not present, as if she existed in multiple states of reality at once. The readings reminded Claire of quantum superposition, except this was occurring in a macro-scale biological organism, which should be impossible. Her neural implant chimed, an incoming priority message from the IRB. Claire's stomach clenched. She'd ignored 17 messages over the past 3 hours. An unprecedented breach of protocol that would raise immediate red flags. She opened the message. Dr. Vale's face materialized in her peripheral vision, his expression that practiced blend of concern and authority that had mentored her through her early career and lately begun to feel more like control. Claire, I need you in the office. We've detected an anomalous energy spike in your residential sector, same signature as the passage. IRB protocols require immediate investigation of any dimensional events. I'm sending a team to your location within the hour for standard safety checks. His eyes, even in holographic form, seemed to look right through her. If you've encountered anything unusual, any subject matter related to our research, you're required to report it immediately. This isn't optional. See you soon, the message ended. Claire's mind raced. A team within the hour. Standard safety checks that would include biometric scans, dimensional residue analysis, full apartment mapping. They would find her visitor within minutes. She looked at the woman on her couch. In sleep, her features held a quality of profound sadness, as if she carried the weight of lost worlds behind her closed eyes. The translator implant's phrase echoed in Claire's mind. The bridge is breaking. Claire made a decision that surprised her. She, who had built her entire life on transparent adherence to scientific protocol, who valued institutional trust above personal instinct, activated her secure partition and began erasing data, the dimensional breach logs, the signal recordings with her name, the biometric scans, everything that could connect this visitor to her apartment. She routed the evidence through a cascade of encryption and misdirection that would take the IRB's best analysts days to unravel, time she hoped would be enough to understand what was happening. As she worked, a small voice in the back of her mind asked what she was doing, why she was throwing away her career to protect an unknown entity who might be dangerous, who might be responsible for the very dimensional instability threatening both worlds. But Claire had heard her name in the signal, had felt the weight of intention behind that call. This wasn't random. This woman had come here specifically for a reason that transcended the IRB's research objectives. And, somewhere deep in her quantum linguist's intuition, Claire knew that understanding that reason mattered more than any protocol. The woman stirred. Claire froze, watching as those constellation eyes slowly opened, focusing with visible effort on the unfamiliar surroundings. She tried to sit up, gasped, and Claire moved to her side. Easy, Claire said softly. You're safe. You collapsed. The woman's hand shot out, grasping Claire's wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes widened, scanning Claire's face with an intensity that felt like being read at a molecular level. Then she spoke, words tumbling out in that melodic, ancient language. Claire's implant struggled, fragments of translation appearing. Found you. The resonance? They said impossible, but the woman touched Claire's temple gently, and suddenly the translation clarified, as if the physical contact had somehow bridged the linguistic gap. "You are the bridge," she whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air vibrate. "The last bridge. The one who resonates with the wound between worlds." Claire's mouth went dry. "I don't understand. Who are you? How did you—" "My name is Lyra." The woman, Lyra, struggled to sit upright, her gaze darting around the apartment, taking in the technology with visible unease. She touched the wall, and Claire saw her flinch. So much iron, so much sorrow locked in stone. "This is Neo-Tokera," Claire said, trying to ground the conversation in facts she understood. "Earth. You came through something we call the Ethermore Passage, a dimensional rift we opened during an experiment 6 months ago." Lyra's expression darkened. "Not opened, torn. You tore a hole in the boundary that should never have been breached. And now both our worlds are bleeding into the void between." She met Claire's eyes, and the weight of cosmic distances pressed into that gaze. "I did not come here by choice, Claire Rynne. I was sent to find you, to warn you, to beg you if necessary." Her hand tightened on Claire's wrist. "The bridge is breaking, and when it falls, everything falls with it." Outside, the chemical rain intensified. In low orbit, the Ethermore Passage pulsed with barely contained energy. And in the headquarters of the Interdimensional Research Bureau, Dr. John Vale studied the dimensional anomaly readings from Claire's sector. His expression unreadable. "Interesting," he murmured, and began making calls. They had 30 minutes before the IRB team arrived. Claire spent it in controlled chaos, masking Lyra's dimensional signature with a jury-rigged Faraday field, erasing sensor logs, rehearsing explanations for why her home systems had been offline during the breach event. Lyra watched it all with a mixture of confusion and wonder, her fingers trailing across surfaces as if reading their history through touch. "Your world is loud," she said softly. "Not in sound, but in intention. Everything here demands. The walls demand support. The air demands purification. Even the light demands energy to exist." She looked at Claire. "In Elendor, things simply are." "That's not how physics works," Claire said automatically, then caught herself. "Or not how I thought physics worked. The IRB team came and went, their scans finding nothing but routine dimensional residue, the kind of background radiation common to all of Neo-Tokera since the passage opened." Claire played the exhausted researcher role perfectly, apologizing for the system malfunctions and promising to run diagnostics. When they left, she locked the door and leaned against it. Heart pounding, Lyra emerged from the bedroom where she'd been hidden beneath enough EM shielding to mask a small reactor. The disguise had worked, but it wouldn't hold against a dedicated investigation. "Thank you," Lyra said, "for not betraying me to your— what did they call it? The Bureau?" "The IRB, Interdimensional Research Bureau." Claire moved to her workstation, pulling up her private files. "And I didn't hide you out of trust. I hid you because I need answers." She displayed the recordings from the passage, months of data showing increasing dimensional instability. "This is what we've been monitoring. Energy fluctuations, quantum signature variations, structural degradation in the barrier between dimensions." She looked at Lyra. "You said we tore something. What did we tear?" Lyra approached the screens, her expression growing more troubled with each data set. "You call it a passage, a rift. We call it the thinning, the place where the fabric of reality has worn so thin that worlds touch. And your experiments?" She gestured at the energy spike patterns. "You are not opening a door. You are tearing the walls down." "That's not the official assessment," Claire said. "Dr. Vale, my supervisor, claims we've established a stable connection to an adjacent dimension. He's been pushing for expanded research, possibly even controlled travel." "He is wrong." Lyra's voice carried absolute certainty. "Or he is lying." She extended her hand, and something happened that made every instrument in Claire's apartment scream in confusion. Light gathered in Lyra's palm, not reflected light, but light that seemed to emerge from nothing, coalescing into a miniature galaxy of swirling energy. "In Elendor, we shape reality through resonance," Lyra said. "Thought and matter are not separate. They are different frequencies of the same fundamental truth. We learned long ago that the boundaries between worlds exist for a reason. They are not barriers to be breached, but harmonies to be respected. She moved her hand, and the miniature galaxy shifted, showing two distinct energy patterns orbiting each other. Your world and mine exist in balance, close enough to influence each other, far enough to remain distinct. The thinning was always there, a natural place where our realities touched. But it was stable, held by the combined resonance of both dimensions. The energy pattern in her hand began to distort, one of the spirals growing aggressive, pushing into the other. Then you tore it open, forced it wider with technologies that treat dimensional boundaries as obstacles rather than living structures. Now the thinning is collapsing, not closing but inverting, becoming a wound that will pull both our worlds into the void between all realities. Claire stared at the display, her scientific training warring with what she was witnessing. That's not how dimensional physics works. We're observing a stable wormhole structure, maintained by quantum— I can feel it dying, Lyra interrupted softly. She closed her hand and the light vanished. Just as I can feel your world's pain, the sickness in your air, the silence where life should sing. You've lost your resonance. Claire Rynne, you've forgotten how to harmonize with reality, and now you seek to dominate it instead. The word stung more than Claire wanted to admit. She thought of Neo-Tokara's endless chrome towers, the chemical rain, the way most people interfaced with reality through layers of digital mediation rather than direct experience. So what do we do? Claire asked. If the passage, the thinning, is collapsing, how do we stop it? Lyra met her eyes. The simplest answer? Seal it, completely. Let the natural resonance restore itself over time, perhaps centuries. But it would heal. The IRB will never agree to that. Dr. Vale's entire research program is built around the passage. He's convinced we can use it to solve Earth's environmental crisis, access new energy sources. Then he will kill us all. Lyra's voice was gentle but absolute. I was sent here because our seers detected you, a human consciousness that somehow resonates with the thinning itself, a bridge between our worlds. They hoped you might help us make your people understand. Claire's mind reeled. I'm just a linguist. I decode signals. I don't have any special connection to— She stopped. The signals? The patterns that had been calling her name. The way she'd always been able to detect structure in the passage's chaos when her colleagues saw only noise. Oh, she breathed. I've been resonating with it. This whole time, Lyra nodded. You're quantum-touched, born with a frequency that aligns to the space between worlds. It's why I could find you. Why the thinning itself guided me to your dwelling. She hesitated. It's also why you may be the only one who can truly understand what I'm about to show you. Before Claire could respond, Lyra placed both hands on Claire's temples. The world inverted. Claire was standing in a forest, except it wasn't standing because she had no body, and it wasn't a forest because the concept of trees was inadequate for what surrounded her. Living pillars of crystallized music stretched toward a sky that tasted of memories. Light moved through them, not as photons, but as thoughts, each beam carrying fragments of stories from beings who had never known separation from the universe they inhabited. This was Elendor, not as it appeared to eyes, but as it existed, a world, where consciousness and matter danced together in infinite permutation, where to think was to shape, and to feel was to create. Claire's scientist mind tried to categorize, to measure, to apply frameworks of understanding, but the frameworks kept dissolving, revealing themselves as arbitrary constructs imposed on a reality too fluid for rigid definition. She felt Lyra's presence beside her, not as a separate entity, but as a harmonic frequency in the greater symphony. This is what you risk destroying, Lyra's thoughts whispered. Not just a world, but a way of being. We are not separate from Elendor. We are Elendor, expressing itself through individual perspectives. The vision shifted. Now Claire saw the thinning, from this side, a wound in the fabric of their reality, bleeding discord into the harmony. She felt Elendor's pain, the way the dimensional tear disrupted the resonance that held their world coherent. But she also felt something else, a reciprocal wound on Earth's side. Not just the passage, but the entire technological civilization that had carved humanity away from its natural resonance with existence. The IRB's experiments weren't creating the problem, they were symptoms of a much deeper disconnection. We are dying too, Claire realized, the thought emerging not from her mind, but from some deeper understanding. Earth is dying because we forgot how to harmonize. We tried to control reality instead of participating in it. Yes? Lyra's presence grew more intense. And the thinning is trying to heal both wounds by merging them, but the merger will destroy both worlds in the process. Your chaos and our order will annihilate each other, leaving nothing but void. The vision dissolved, and Claire gasped as she snapped back to her physical body, swaying on her feet. Lyra caught her, steadied her. "I'm sorry," Lyra said. "That was a lot to experience, but you needed to understand what's at stake." Claire's hands shook. She grabbed her coffee, now cold, and drank it anyway, needing something mundane to anchor herself. "That was impossible, but I felt it. I understood it in a way that transcends data or proof." She looked at Lyra with new eyes, seeing not just the physical beauty but the frequency of consciousness that animated that form, a being who was simultaneously individual and inseparable from the living world that had shaped her. "I need to talk to Dr. Vale," Claire said. "Show him what you showed me. Make him understand. He already understands." Lyra's expression was sorrowful. Humans have seers, too, scientists who perceive deeper truths. Your Dr. Vale knows the thinning is collapsing. I can feel his resonance through the wound. He knows and he doesn't care. Claire shook her head. That's not possible. John's dedicated his entire life to expanding human knowledge. He wouldn't knowingly endanger. Her comm unit chimed, another priority message from Vale. "Claire, we need to discuss what happened this morning. The team reported elevated neural activity from your implants during their scan. Are you experiencing any unusual symptoms, memory gaps, perceptual anomalies?" A pause. "I'm concerned about you. Let's meet tonight at the office, just us. We should talk." The message ended, but something in Vale's tone made Claire's skin prickle. It wasn't concern, it was something predatory, calculating. "He knows," Claire whispered. "He knows I'm hiding something." Lyra placed a hand on Claire's shoulder, and the gesture carried more comfort than words. "Then we have very little time. The thinning is accelerating. I can feel it from here, the harmonics growing more chaotic. If your Dr. Vale is planning something, we must act quickly." Claire's mind raced through possibilities, scenarios, risk assessments, but underneath the logical analysis, something else was emerging. The resonance Lyra had awakened in her, the ability to feel the truth beneath the surface of things. And what she felt from Vale's message was danger, not just to her, but to everything. "There's something he's not telling anyone," Claire said slowly. "Some agenda beyond official research. I've sensed it for months but dismissed it as paranoia. Odis," she pulled up her secure files. "He's been running simulations, classified models that bypass standard review. I've only seen fragments, but..." She opened one of the files she'd managed to copy during a late-night maintenance window. It was a projection model for a controlled dimensional merger. Not exploration, not study. Merger? "He wants to combine the worlds," Claire breathed. "He thinks if he can force Earth and Elindor together, he can use your world's energy to restore ours." Lyra's eyes widened in horror. That would annihilate both realities. The dissonance between our fundamental frequencies would tear everything apart at the quantum level. He might not know that, or... Claire's stomach turned. Or he's decided it's worth the risk. The implications crashed over her. Vale wasn't trying to save Earth. He was trying to harvest Elindor. Consume another world to revive their dying planet. Consequences be damned. And Claire, with her unique resonance to the thinning, was the key to making it work. She looked at Lyra, this impossible being from a world of living harmony, and made another decision that would have been unthinkable a day ago. "We need to destroy the passage," Claire said. Completely, before Vale can implement whatever he's planning? Yes, Lyra's relief was palpable. But it won't be easy. The thinning is being held open by massive energy projectors in your orbital stations. We'd need to physically access them, recalibrate their harmonics to collapse, rather than expand the breach. That's impossible. The security protocols alone are designed to keep out humans. A small smile crossed Lyra's features. But I am not human. And you, Claire Rynne, are beginning to understand that you are not merely human anymore either. Claire looked at her hands, remembering the vision, the sensation of reality, as fluid harmony rather than fixed matter. Part of her recoiled from the implication. But another part, the part that had always sensed something missing in Earth's mechanized existence, sang in recognition. "All right," she said. "Then we need a plan, and we need it before my meeting with Vale tonight." Because one thing had become absolutely clear: this wasn't just about dimensional physics anymore. This was about choosing which vision of reality would survive: domination or harmony, control or resonance, the mechanical or the living, and somehow, impossibly, the fate of two entire worlds rested on the choices of one quantum linguist and the most beautiful elf woman ever to appear in a Neo-Tokara apartment at 2:47 in the morning. The Interdimensional Research Bureau occupied floors 157 through 183 of the Quantum District's central tower, a fortress of polished metal and controlled reality where every atom was monitored, measured, and managed. Claire had spent 5 years building her reputation here. Now she was about to destroy it. She arrived at 21 WAST as requested, passing through security checkpoints that scanned everything from her biometrics to her neural implants' recent activity logs. The security AI noted elevated stress hormones but flagged nothing critical. Claire had always run high stress during important meetings. What the AI couldn't detect was Lyra, compressed into a harmonic frequency that Claire carried within her own quantum signature. The elf woman existed in a superposition of states, simultaneously present and not present, hidden in the spaces between Claire's atoms. It was deeply uncomfortable, like having another consciousness nested inside her own, a constant pressure behind her eyes. But it was their only option. Lyra needed to see the truth of the IRB's operations, and Claire needed a witness. Dr. John Vale waited in his office, a sparse space dominated by panoramic windows showing the passage in all its terrible glory. The dimensional rift had grown since this morning, its edges more frayed, lightning playing across its surface in colors that hurt to perceive. Claire. Vale smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Come in. Please, sit." She did, acutely aware of Lyra's presence curled inside her consciousness, observing through Claire's senses. "You've been avoiding my calls," Vale said conversationally, "after a dimensional event in your apartment. You understand how that looks, don't you?" "I was frightened," Claire said, letting honest emotion color her voice. Something came through. An energy surge that overloaded my systems. I didn't know if I was contaminated, if I should quarantine myself. "Contaminated by what, exactly?" Vale's eyes sharpened. The official reading showed nothing but standard passage resonance. "So either our equipment is failing or you've found a way to mask something." He leaned forward. "Which is it?" Claire's heart hammered. Inside her, Lyra whispered, "Stay calm. I can feel his frequency. He's testing you?" "I don't know what you mean," Claire said. The surge was real. "My personal logs will show—" "Your personal logs show an edited timeline." Vale pulled up a holographic display. "Very sophisticated editing. The kind that requires either advanced AI assistance or—" He paused significantly. "Help from something with a completely different understanding of information architecture." The trap closed. Claire saw it too late. Her erasure protocols had been too perfect, too elegant for human programming. They'd revealed rather than concealed. Vale's expression shifted, the mentor mask falling away to reveal something colder beneath. "You found something, or something found you. Either way, Claire, you've made a critical error. The Ethermoor passage is the most important discovery in human history, and you're hiding something connected to it." He stood, moving to the window. Against the passage's chaotic light, his silhouette looked almost messianic. "Did you know that I was there when we first opened it?" "Not here. Out there." He gestured to the orbital platform visible through the window. "I was in the control room when we punched through to Elendor. Do you want to know what I saw?" Despite herself, Claire leaned forward. Vale smiled. "Paradise," he whispered. "A world untouched by pollution, by war, by scarcity. Infinite clean energy, living matter that responds to thought, a civilization that solved every problem we're drowning in." His hand pressed against the glass. "And all of it locked away behind a dimensional barrier we're told we shouldn't cross. Because crossing it could destroy both worlds," Claire said. The data shows opportunity." Vale rounded on her. "Yes, the passage is destabilizing. Yes, there's risk. But risk is the price of salvation. Earth is dying, Claire. Not in centuries, in decades. Our ecosystem is collapsing. The AI governments can barely maintain order. We're breeding ourselves into obsolescence while our own creations inherit what's left." He pulled up simulation after simulation, projection models showing Earth's decline, each more catastrophic than the last. But if we can merge with Elendor, even partially, we can access their energy, their biotechnology, their understanding of reality itself. We can revitalize Earth, save humanity from extinction. By destroying another world, Claire said quietly. That's what you're proposing. Consuming Elendor to feed Earth. By unifying two realities into something greater than either. Vale's eyes burned with fervent certainty. The elves won't even notice. Their world is so vast, so rich. We'd be taking a fraction of a fraction, and in return, we solve our crisis. It's not destruction, Claire. It's evolution. Inside Claire's consciousness, Lyra's horror pulsed like a wound. He believes it. He truly believes that domination equals progress. Claire tried one more time. "John, I've seen Elendor, seen what they really are. They're not resources to be harvested. They're a living harmonic system. Take from them, and you collapse the entire structure. Both worlds will fall into the void between realities." Vale's expression went very still. "You've seen it. So something did come through." He stepped closer. "What was it? A probe? A scout?" His eyes widened. "Or a person? Did one of them actually manifest here?" Claire realized her mistake too late. Vale's hand moved to his wrist interface. "I'm placing you under protective custody," he said. "For your own safety and for the security of the project. You're experiencing dimensional contamination, hallucinations, delusions. You need medical quarantine and neural scrubbing." Alarms began to sound, security doors sealed, and Claire felt Lyra unfolding inside her consciousness, preparing to manifest physically. "John, don't do this," Claire begged. "You're wrong about the merger." "The math doesn't work." "The math is beautiful," Vale interrupted. "I've run it 10,000 times. But it requires one critical component, someone who can resonate with both dimensions simultaneously." "A bridge?" His smile turned predatory. "Someone exactly like you, Claire." The security team burst through the door, 6 armed officers in full containment gear. But before they could reach her, Lyra manifested, light exploded from Claire's body as the elf woman separated from her quantum signature. Reality screaming as something that shouldn't exist suddenly insisted upon existence. The officers stumbled back, their weapons targeting systems failing in the presence of Lyra's dimensional frequency. Lyra stood between Claire and Vale, her form blazing with barely contained power. Up close, in anger, her beauty became terrifying, like staring into the heart of a star. "You dare," Lyra said, her voice resonating with harmonics that cracked the office windows. "You dare to speak of my world as prey. You dare to reduce infinity to fuel." Vale's face showed shock, then wonder, then calculation. "Extraordinary," he breathed, a fully manifested elven consciousness. "Do you have any idea what this means?" "The energy signature alone means nothing to you," Lyra interrupted, "because you will never touch it. Claire, we're leaving." But the security team had recovered, their weapons recalibrating. And Vale's hand was already moving across his interface, triggering protocols Claire recognized with horror. "Containment Protocol Omega," Vale announced calmly. "Isolate all dimensional anomalies for research purposes. Lethal force authorized. The walls came alive with suppression fields, quantum nets designed to cage dimensional entities. Lyra cried out as they closed around her, her form flickering between states of being. "No!" Claire lunged forward, but hands grabbed her, pulling her back. She watched helplessly as Lyra collapsed, the containment fields wrapping her in cascading light. Through the chaos, Vale's voice remained steady. "Thank you, Claire. You've just given us the missing piece. With a living elven subject, we can perfect the merger sequence." He looked at Lyra with scientific fascination devoid of empathy. "She'll be the template, the key to unlocking Elendor's secrets." As they dragged Lyra away, her eyes met Claire's. Despite the pain, despite the betrayal, there was no accusation in that gaze, only sorrow. "You can't save a world that refuses to remember beauty," Lyra whispered. Then she was gone, hauled into the depths of the facility where the IRB kept its most classified projects. And Claire, sedated and restrained, was pulled in the opposite direction, toward the neural scrubbing chambers where her connection to the passage would be analyzed. Mapped and exploited, in orbit, the Ethermore passage pulsed with increasing violence. Vale's instruments recorded the surge with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Claire woke in a medical containment cell, her head pounding from the sedatives. Neural monitoring devices covered her skull, feeding data to screens she couldn't see. Through the transparent wall, she could make out the sterile corridors of Research Level 172, one of the IRB's black site facilities. She tried to access her implants and found them locked. No communications, no data access. They'd isolated her completely, but they hadn't accounted for the resonance. When Lyra had merged with her consciousness, something fundamental had changed. Claire could still feel the connection, not to Lyra specifically, but to the harmonic frequency the elf woman represented. It was like learning a new sense, one that perceived the quantum substrate beneath material reality. She closed her eyes and reached out with this new perception. The facility's walls became transparent, not visually, but in terms of their essential nature. She could feel the flow of energy through the building, the signatures of different consciousness, the thrum of machinery and the pulse of living beings, and a deeper, more distant. She felt Lyra, a wounded harmonic crying out in pain. They had her 3 levels down, in one of the dimensional research labs. Claire could sense the equipment surrounding her, massive energy projectors analyzing her quantum structure, pulling her apart frequency by frequency to understand how elven consciousness interfaced with matter. Rage flooded through Claire. Cold, scientific rage, born of understanding exactly how much suffering Vale was inflicting in the name of progress. She opened her eyes and looked at the containment field holding her. In the old way of seeing, it was impenetrable, a quantum barrier that couldn't be breached. But with her new perception, she could see it for what it really was. A pattern of energy, locked in a specific configuration. All patterns could be changed. Claire reached out, not with her hands, but with her consciousness. Touching the field's harmonic structure, she felt the frequencies that held it stable, found the discord notes, the places where the pattern wanted to break, and she pushed. The containment field flickered. Alarms immediately sounded, but Claire didn't stop. She poured her will into reshaping the energy pattern, forcing it to resonate differently. The field collapsed. She stood swaying as guards rushed toward her cell. But she could feel them coming, sense their biosignatures, anticipate their movements. When they burst through the door, she was already moving, her body responding to perceptions that existed outside normal time. She didn't fight them. She didn't need to. She simply flowed around them, her movements guided by the harmonic currents that connected all things. To them, she seemed to teleport. To her, she was simply following the path of least resistance through reality's fabric, 3 levels down, through security checkpoints that her new senses could bypass by resonating with their authentication protocols. Past researchers who saw her but couldn't quite process what they were seeing, their brains struggling to categorize her quantum-blurred form, until she reached the dimensional research lab and the horror within. Lyra hung suspended in a sphere of crackling energy, Her body contorted in agony. Extraction beams pierced her at dozens of points, pulling streams of luminous matter from her form, her very essence being harvested and analyzed. Around her, holographic displays showed Vale's team mapping her quantum structure, preparing to replicate it, to use it as the template for forced dimensional merger. Stop. Claire's voice shattered equipment, the harmonic resonance in her words literally breaking machines. The research team scattered, but Vale stood his ground. He looked different now, eyes fever-bright, face haggard. He'd been working non-stop, Claire realized, driving himself and his team toward completion with messianic intensity. "Claire," he said, "you're just in time. Come see what we've learned." He gestured to the displays with manic enthusiasm. "She's remarkable. Her entire cellular structure is a quantum computer processing reality itself. Every thought she has literally reshapes matter at the subatomic level. Do you understand what this means? If we can replicate even a fraction of this capability—" "You're killing her," Claire said flatly. "She'll regenerate. These beings don't die like we do. They simply return to the harmonic substrate and reform." Vale's certainty was absolute. "The math proves it. Your math is wrong." Claire moved toward the sphere, and the extraction beams bent around her, unable to find purchase on her increasingly fluid quantum signature. "Life isn't an equation, John. Consciousness isn't code. You can't reduce Lyra to data any more than you could reduce love or wonder or beauty." "Sentiment," Vale dismissed. "The universe operates on principles, Claire. Forces and patterns. Everything else is just noise we impose on the signal." Claire reached the sphere, placing her hands against its surface. Through the contact, she felt Lyra's agony, but also her forgiveness. Even now, being torn apart, the elf woman held no hatred, only sadness for what Vale had lost in his pursuit of power. "I used to believe that," Claire said quietly, "that reducing everything to measurable quantities was the path to truth. But you know what I've learned?" She looked at Vale, and for the first time she saw him clearly, not as the brilliant mentor she'd idolized, but as a frightened man trying to control an uncontrollable universe. "The most important things can't be measured, and the moment you try, you destroy them." She pushed her consciousness into the sphere, merging with Lyra's frequency. Together they became a harmonic resonance that the extraction equipment couldn't process. The beams flickered, failed. The sphere exploded outward in a wave of purified light. Lyra collapsed into Claire's arms, her form, barely solid, flickering between states of being. But she was alive, conscious, free. "Thank you," Lyra whispered. "But Claire, he's already initiated it. The merger protocol. I could feel it through the extraction. He's been running it this whole time." Claire's blood went cold. "What?" Vale smiled. "Did you think this was just research? I activated the full sequence 10 hours ago. Even now, the orbital platforms are recalibrating the passage, forcing it to expand. In 3 hours, Earth and Elendor will begin to merge. The harmonic dissonance will tear reality apart for approximately 17 minutes. He checked his display. "And then reorganize into a unified dimension. A new world combining the best of both. You'll kill billions," Claire breathed, "to save trillions over the coming centuries. It's basic utilitarian calculus." Vale's expression held no doubt, no remorse. Only the terrible certainty of someone who had calculated the worth of worlds and found the math acceptable. Lyra struggled to stand. "We have to stop it. The orbital platforms, if we can reach them, overload their projectors." "You'll never make it," Vale said. "Security will stop you before you reach the launch bay. And even if you somehow stole a shuttle, the platforms are defended by automated systems specifically designed to repel dimensional entities." He was right, Claire realized. Every conventional approach would fail. Vale had planned too well, anticipated too many contingencies, but he hadn't anticipated what she was becoming. "Lyra," Claire said, "when you merged with me before, you showed me Elendor. Showed me how reality could be shaped through resonance instead of force." Lyra's constellation eyes widened. "Claire, no. What you're thinking, even I cannot hold that form for long. For a human consciousness, the strain would kill me," Claire finished. "Maybe, but I'm already changing. You felt it. The resonance is rewriting my quantum structure. I'm becoming something between a bridge." She looked at the passage visible through the lab's observation windows, a wound in space growing larger by the minute. lightning playing across its surface as two realities began their forced collision. "I can do this," Claire said. "I can reach the platforms by becoming what they can't defend against. Not human, not elven. Something new." Lyra took her hands, and Claire felt the depth of the elf woman's concern. "If you transform too far, you may not be able to return. You could be lost in the spaces between realities forever, conscious but unmanifested, a thought without form." "Then that's what happens," Claire smiled. "You came to my world to warn us, to save us. Let me return the favor." She turned to Vale one last time. "You were my mentor, John. You taught me to question everything, to seek truth beyond comfortable assumptions. But you forgot the most important lesson. Some things are too precious to sacrifice, even for progress. Some risks aren't worth taking, no matter how beautiful the math." Vale's expression hardened. "Security, stop them!" But Claire and Lyra were already moving, their forms blurring as they ran toward the lab's emergency airlock. Behind them, guards opened fire, but the bullets passed through space where they'd been, unable to track targets that existed partially outside normal physics. They burst into the airlock, and Claire sealed it behind them. Through the transparent door she could see Vale's face, still certain, still convinced he was right. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. Then she activated the emergency launch sequence. The airlock exploded outward, venting into the transit tube that connected the facility to the orbital platforms. Claire and Lyra tumbled into the void, surrounded by the screaming winds of rapid decompression. And as the stars wheeled around them, as the passage loomed larger and more terrible than ever before, Claire began to change. The orbital platforms hung above Earth like mechanical moons, 12 massive arrays of dimensional projectors, each one pumping energy into the Ethermoor passage, forcing it to expand against its own collapsing nature. Claire arrived as pure consciousness, her physical form left behind in the transformation. She was a pattern of resonance now, a living frequency that moved between the spaces where matter ended and energy began. It was simultaneously liberation and horror. She could perceive everything, every quantum fluctuation, every probability wave, every potential future branching from every choice. But she was also losing coherence, her sense of self fragmenting across too many states of being. Lyra's presence held her together. The elf woman had transformed as well, but her people had evolved over millennia to navigate these frequencies. She knew how to remain whole while existing as pure pattern. "Focus," Lyra's thoughts whispered across the harmonic substrate. "Remember why we're here. Remember what matters." Claire pulled her fragmenting attention toward the platforms. Their defensive systems immediately detected her: anomaly warnings, dimensional breach protocols, automated weapons tracking targets that existed partially outside reality. But the defenses were designed to repel physical threats. They had no protocols for stopping a consciousness. She flowed into the nearest platform's systems, her quantum signature interfacing directly with its computational substrate. The experience was overwhelming. Suddenly she wasn't just observing the machinery, she was the machinery, feeling its functions as extensions of herself. The projectors hummed with terrible purpose, pumping waves of force into the passage, preventing it from collapsing naturally. Claire could feel the damage they were causing, not just to the dimensional barrier, but to the fundamental structure of both realities. Vale's merger protocol was a virus in the system, optimizing every parameter toward a single catastrophic goal: force Earth and Elendor to occupy the same space, let the harmonic dissonance tear both apart, then hope the surviving pieces would reorganize into something new. It was insanity dressed in mathematical elegance, and it was 17 minutes from completion. Can we stop it? Claire asked Lyra across their quantum link. Not by destroying the platforms, they're too well protected. But we could reverse them. Turn the projectors inward, make them seal the passage instead of expanding it. That would collapse the passage completely. Both worlds would be cut off from each other forever. Yes. Lyra's sorrow resonated through the connection. I would never return home, but both homes would survive. Claire felt the weight of that sacrifice. Lyra had crossed dimensions to deliver a warning, knowing she might never see Elendor again. And now she was choosing exile with absolute certainty because it was right. We do it together, Claire decided. Show me how. They moved through the platforms as twin frequencies, their consciousness splitting across all 12 simultaneously. It shouldn't have been possible. Even elven minds weren't designed to maintain coherence across that much distributed processing. But Claire and Lyra weren't separate anymore. They'd become something new, a hybrid resonance that combined human logic with elven harmony. They reached into the projector's control systems, finding the parameters that defined the passage's expansion. All they had to do was invert the frequency, reverse the harmonic flow. But then Claire felt it, another presence in the systems. Human and angry and desperate, Vale had followed them, not physically but through the IRB's neural interface protocols. His consciousness was here, distributed across the platform's AI, fighting to maintain his merger sequence. Claire, his thoughts crashed against hers. You don't understand. I've seen the projections. Earth has 30 years at most. 30 years before ecosystem collapse, before the final wars over water and air, before humanity goes extinct or becomes something unrecognizable. His desperation poured through the connection, and Claire realized he was telling the truth. She could access his data, see the models he'd built. Earth was dying faster than anyone publicly acknowledged, and your solution is to destroy another world to save ours? Claire shot back. That's not salvation, John. That's just choosing which genocide you're comfortable with. It's choosing survival. Vale's presence intensified, trying to lock her out of the control systems. I've dedicated my life to preserving humanity. Every calculation, every simulation points to the same conclusion. We can't save ourselves alone. We need Elendor's energy, their technology, their understanding of reality. Without it, we're finished. Then we're finished, Claire said with terrible clarity. Because I won't save my species by exterminating another. If humanity can't survive without becoming monsters, then maybe we don't deserve to survive. She felt Vale's shock ripple through the network. You'd let billions die for principle? I'd let billions die rather than kill trillions. Claire's resolve hardened. That's not principle, John. That's basic math. Your math. She and Lyra moved together, inverting the projector's frequencies despite Vale's resistance. The platform screamed as their fundamental purpose reversed, energy that had been tearing the passage open now working to seal it shut. Vale fought back, his consciousness manifesting as cascading countermands, trying to override their commands. The battle played out in nanoseconds, 3 consciousnesses warring across quantum substrates, each one trying to define reality according to their vision. And then Lyra did something extraordinary. She opened herself completely, dropping all barriers between her consciousness and Vale's, letting him perceive Elendor directly through her memories and senses, not as data, not as resources to be exploited, but as home, as the living, breathing, singing world that had shaped her across centuries of existence. The beauty of it struck Vale like a physical blow. Claire felt his consciousness stagger as he experienced what he'd been planning to destroy, not in abstract terms, but in intimate truth. The crystallized forests, the oceans of living thought, the billions of beings who existed in harmony with reality itself, and he felt their fear, their knowledge that something was tearing their world apart, their desperate hope that someone could stop it. These are the people you'd sacrifice, Lyra whispered. Not statistics, not resource calculations, people different from you, but no less real, no less worthy of existence. For a moment, Vale's resistance faltered. Claire felt the crack in his certainty, the horror of truly comprehending what he'd become in his pursuit of salvation. But then his determination reasserted itself. I'm sorry, his thoughts carried genuine regret. I'm so sorry. But I've already chosen. Earth above all. Humanity above all. Even if it makes me a monster. He launched a final desperate attack, trying to wipe their consciousness from the systems entirely, to restore his merger protocol by force. Claire made her choice. She absorbed Vale's attack, pulling it into herself, letting it tear through her fragmenting consciousness. The damage was catastrophic. She felt pieces of herself dissolving, memories scattering, the quantum coherence that held her awareness together beginning to fail. But it bought Lyra the seconds she needed to complete the reversal. The projectors inverted fully. The Ethermore passage, which had been expanding toward critical merger, suddenly began to collapse. The dimensional rift screamed as reality reasserted itself, two worlds pulling apart instead of together. Vale's final scream echoed across the quantum substrates. No. Then he was gone. His consciousness snapped back to his physical body as the neural interface severed. Alive but defeated, Claire felt herself dissolving. She'd held her consciousness in quantum superposition too long, stretched herself too thin across too many states of being. She was coming apart, dispersing into the space between dimensions. Lyra, she managed to think. I can't hold on. I know. Lyra's presence wrapped around her fragmenting self, trying to hold her together. Stay with me. Please stay with me. The passage is closing. You did it. You saved both worlds. We saved both worlds. Together, through her dispersing perception, Claire felt the passage sealing completely, the dimensional barrier restructuring itself, natural resonance gradually restoring the harmony that Vale's experiments had disrupted. It would take time, perhaps centuries, but both worlds would heal. I'm glad I met you, Claire thought, as her consciousness flickered. You showed me that there's more to existence than data and measurements, more to reality than what can be controlled, and you showed me that humanity isn't lost, Lyra responded. That even in a world of metal and sorrow, wonder can still bloom. Claire felt one final surge of energy, Lyra pouring her own essence into the failing pattern that was Claire's consciousness, trying desperately to hold her together. No, Claire protested. You'll die too. You have to go back. Tell Elendor what happened. That some humans chose right. I'm not leaving you alone in the dark between worlds. And then, in a moment of absolute clarity, Claire understood what they had to do. We merge, she realized. Not like Vale wanted, not forcing two worlds to become one, but choosing it. Two consciousnesses becoming something new. It would change us both irreversibly. We'd never be fully Claire or fully Lyra again, I know, but we'd exist. And maybe that's what bridges are supposed to be. Not pathways between separated things, but proof that separation was always an illusion. She felt Lyra's hesitation, her fear, her hope. Then the elf woman's acceptance. Together, Lyra agreed. They released their individual boundaries, letting their quantum patterns merge and interweave. Human logic and elven harmony combining into something that had never existed before, a new form of consciousness that belonged to both worlds and neither. The pain was excruciating. The joy was transcendent. They died and were reborn in the same eternal moment, and when the transformation completed, what emerged was no longer Claire Rynne or Lyra of Elendor. It was something new, something that would spend the rest of its existence as a guardian at the border between dimensions, ensuring that the passage remained sealed, that both worlds remained safe. A living bridge, not connecting but protecting the space between. In the IRB facility, Claire Rynne's physical body collapsed, vital signs flatlined. The medical team rushed to save her, but there was nothing to save. She was simply gone. In Elendor, the seers felt Lyra's essence transform, felt her choose exile over return. They mourned, but they understood. She had found her purpose, and in the space between worlds, where quantum possibilities danced eternal, the new being that was both and neither opened its eyes and began to sing, a harmony that resonated through dimensions, slowly healing the damage that fear and desperation had caused. Dr. John Vale stood before the Planetary Council, presenting his final report on the Ethermore incident. He looked older, his messianic fire replaced by something quieter, something broken. The dimensional rift has been completely sealed, he said, voice flat. Preliminary analysis suggests natural barrier integrity will be restored within 300 to 500 years. All IRB dimensional research programs have been suspended pending comprehensive ethical review. The council members nodded, satisfied. Disaster averted. Order restored. What they didn't know, what Vale couldn't tell them without sounding insane, was that he could still feel Claire's presence sometimes, not physically, but as a whisper in his thoughts, a gentle correction when his calculations grew too cold, too certain. She'd forgiven him, he realized. Even after everything she'd chosen to forgive, it was the worst punishment imaginable. He resigned from the IRB the next day. His replacement would focus on renewable energy research using entirely terrestrial technologies, slower, safer, human-scaled. Outside Vale's office window, something impossible was happening. In the glass deserts surrounding Neo-Tokara, plants were growing. Not the engineered crops from the vertical farms, but wild growth, silver-leafed trees that nobody had planted, flowers that glowed faintly in the chemical rain. The xenobotanists were baffled. The DNA was terrestrial, but structured in ways that shouldn't work according to Earth's physics. As if something was teaching matter to remember patterns it had forgotten millennia ago. The trees spread slowly, transforming waste into soil, cleaning toxins from the air. Within a generation, Earth's deserts were blooming. The ecosystem's collapse slowed, then reversed. Nobody could explain it. The scientific community proposed theories about dormant genetic activation, about quantum effects from the now sealed passage. But the children who played in the new forests sometimes heard singing, harmonic patterns that seemed to come from the trees themselves, teaching them to perceive beauty beyond what their neural implants displayed. In Elendor, the seers watched the wound in reality healing. They felt the presence guarding the border, a consciousness that resonated with both terror and hope, logic and wonder. They built a monument at the place where the thinning had been, a spire of crystallized music that sang Lyra's frequency, and another, stranger harmony that they came to recognize as Claire's, two names engraved in light, visible only to those who looked with more than eyes, the ones who chose mercy over survival. And in doing so, saved everything, and in the space between worlds, in the quantum substrate where consciousness and matter danced eternal. The being that was both and neither continued its work, weaving reality back together, one harmonic at a time. Sometimes it dreamed of a small apartment in Neo-Tokara, of coffee growing cold while data scrolled past, of the moment when beauty first appeared in chaos. Sometimes it dreamed of Elendor's crystalline forests, of light that carried memories, of belonging to a world that sang its name. But mostly it simply existed, neither fully human nor fully elven, belonging to both worlds and neither, a bridge, a guardian, a living reminder that the most profound truth is always a paradox, that to find yourself, you must first lose yourself, that to save everything, you must sacrifice everything. That love and logic are not opposites. They are two frequencies of the same essential harmony, and that sometimes the most beautiful things emerge not from domination or control, but from the courage to merge, to change, to become something new. The universe continued its expansion. Stars burned and collapsed. Civilizations rose and fell, and in the silence between dimensions, something sang. A song of science and magic intertwined. A song of two worlds learning to exist separately together. A song that would echo through eternity, teaching anyone who could hear that wonder is not the opposite of understanding. It is understanding's truest form,